At 15, my parents sent me to a wilderness camp because I embarrassed them at a party. They called it character development. Years later, I built a company that beat theirs, and when they tried to destroy it with lies, I exposed their corruption. Hey Reddit, my family's rich, cold, and obsessed with image. I was the kid they'd rather hide than claim, so I built my own life and walked away. But of course, the White Swords don't let go that easily. Let me take you back to where it all started. I'm 35 now, but back then I was 15 and still trying to figure out what it meant to be a Whitmore. My name's Adrian, oldest son of Charles and Vivian Whitmore, a Boston family that treats reputation like a bloodline. My father runs a financial empire. My mother makes sure it looks perfect on magazine covers. My younger brother, Julian, 1 year behind me, is the family's golden boy. Smart, polite, good at pretending. He cares about all the things I couldn't fake. Our house in Beacon Hill looked more like a museum than a home. Marble floors, chandeliers, staff who never smiled unless my mother was watching. That night, the place was filled wall-to-wall with people, senators, CEOs, donors, all pretending to be part of the family. It was our shared birthday gala. I'd turned 15, Julian, 14, born exactly a year apart. Same date, same parents, completely different treatment. Julian stood at the microphone giving a speech about Whitmore family values. His voice didn't even shake. The words were polished, clearly written by Dad, about honor, discipline, and the legacy of hard work. Everyone clapped like it was inspiring. I sat in the back, bored out of my mind, rolling the cufflinks my mom had picked out between my fingers. Then I heard her voice behind me, my mom laughing lightly as she spoke to Asinator's wife. Julian is the future of our family, she said. Adrian is artistic. That word stung. I didn't paint or write poetry. Artistic just meant problem. Something snapped. I don't remember thinking about it. I just got up and walked to the stage. The crowd clapped again, assuming this was planned. Julian looked at me like he wanted to disappear. I grabbed the mic and smiled. Thanks everyone for celebrating the chosen one tonight, I said. A few polite chuckles. Let's raise a glass to Julian, the crown prince of obedience. Silence. I nodded toward my parents. Here's to perfection. May the rest of us stay out of the family photos. The room froze. You could hear the camera shutters going off. My father's jaw didn't move, but his eyes told me everything. My mother's smile didn't budge, but her grip on the champagne glass turned her knuckles white. Julian just stared at the floor. No one said a word to me for the rest of the night. I went to my room and waited for yelling, punishment, anything. Nothing came. The next morning, my phone blew up with texts and emails. Every local news outlet had the same headline. Drunk Whitmore heir causes scene at gala. There were blurry pictures of Mehmed sentence, mouth open, looking wild. I hadn't touched a drink. Didn't matter. The family PR team had already spun the story. When I came downstairs, my dad was reading the paper. My mom was on a call. I stood there waiting. My father finally folded the paper and said, "You embarrassed this family." That was it. No question, no discussion. "You'll attend a leadership retreat starting tomorrow." I said I wasn't drunk. They didn't even look at me. "You'll learn discipline." That was how my parents handled everything. They didn't talk. They outsourced. That night, my phone rang. It was Aunt Eleanor, my dad's sister. She'd always been the black sheep, an artist who lived in a small apartment filled with paint and chaos. She said, "I saw the video. You weren't drunk. No one cares." I said, "They'll twist your truth until you stop fighting." She told me, "Don't let them write your story for you." That was all. No comforting speech, no fake sympathy, just that. And it meant more than anything I'd ever heard from my parents. The next morning, a black SUV idled at the curb outside our Beacon Hill townhouse. My suitcase was already packed. They'd already taken my phone at the house. I didn't ask who did it. The driver was polite but didn't talk. My mother stood by the door holding a teacup like she was watching someone else's kid leave for camp. Julian came out late, still in his school uniform, hair perfect. "It's not that bad," he said. "It's just a program." I didn't answer. I just got in the car. As we pulled away, I looked back at the townhouse. Every window spotless, every shadow where it should be. I thought about the empty oak box my dad gave me for my 14th birthday. He said it represented potential. I didn't understand then. Now I did. It was my job to fill it with whatever version of myself made them look good. The driver turned on the radio. The same story played again. The Whitmore heir reportedly mixed medication with drinks during last night's gala. I watched Thesity fade behind us and said quietly, "They said I was drunk. Fine, I'll make them choke on that lie one day." He didn't hear me. I'd been in the car 4 hours. No phone, no music, just the sound of tires on gravel and the driver, pretending not to notice I was glaring out the window. We'd driven north out of Boston into New Hampshire, past towns that looked emptied by the cold. When West stopped, I saw a wooden sign that said North Valley Leadership Program. It looked less like a camp and more like exile. The air hit me first. Cold, dry, sharp enough to sting my lungs. Trees everywhere, stretching into gray sky. A couple of staff members in hiking gear waited near a fire pit, smiling too wide. One of them said, "Welcome, Adrian," like it was some honor. They took my watch, even the bracelet Aunt Eleanor had given me. No distractions, they said. Journals were allowed 4 nightly reflections. There were maybe 10 other kids there. Some looked like they'd come straight from prep schools. Designer jackets, expensive boots. Others looked rough, like this wasn't their first time being sent away. The counselors gave us a speech about growth through discomfort and learning responsibility. I tuned it out. All I could think about was how far away I was from home and how that was probably the point. They'd enrolled me for the long haul. Breaks were a weekend at home at most, then back into the program. The first week was hell. We woke up before sunrise to the sound of a whistle. Breakfast was instant oatmeal, and if you were late, you didn't eat. The tents leaked whenever it rained, and the showers were freezing. Every night they made us sit in a circle and reflect on our behavior. I'd make jokes, twist their words, anything to keep from saying what they wanted to hear. They called me Boston, like my city was a diagnosis. One night, I snuck an extra granola bar from the supply tent. The next day, they caught me and made me carry water jugs uphill for hours. My arms felt like they were going to fall off. I was angry. But somewhere during that punishment, I realized something. Out here, no one cared who my dad was. Money didn't mean anything when you were covered in mud. About 3 weeks in, everything shifted. A storm rolled in fast, the kind that shakes the ground. The sky turned black, wind howling through the trees. My tent collapsed halfway through the night. Rain poured in, wind tearing everything apart. The counselors were busy with the younger kids, so I was on my own. I remember standing there soaked and shaking, thinking, no one's coming. Fix it or freeze. So I fixed it. Pulled the poles back up, tied the ropes tighter, used rocks to weigh the corners. My fingers went numb, but I got it done. When I finally crawled inside, drenched but safe, I laughed quietly. It wasn't joy. It was disbelief that I'd actually handled something myself without waiting for permission. Then I heard crying. Another tent, maybe 20 FT away. A kid named Alex, 14, was panicking. Said he couldn't breathe. I crawled over, rain still hammering down, and sat with him. I told him to breathe with me. Slow, steady, match the count. Eventually he did. When he calmed down, he said, "Thanks, man," and I just nodded. That night changed something. Not dramatically, but enough. After that, I stopped talking back so much. Not because I agreed with them. I just didn't see the point. The loudest guy there was usually the weakest one. The quiet ones got things done. The counselors noticed. They started calling me steady. They thought I'd learned discipline. What I'd really learned was control. Talking didn't help. Doing did. Days blurred together, chopping wood, patching gear, hiking endless trails. I kept Eleanor's sketchbook with me. I didn't draw much, just wrote short lines when I had time. Things like, "No one's coming. That's fine. Keep moving. Quiet doesn't mean weak." Those little notes became my rhythm. No speeches, no drama. Just words to remind myself who I was. I wasn't trying to be better. I was trying to stop being angry all the time. By the time I turned 17, after nearly 2 years, mostly at North Valley, they handed me a certificate that said, Leadership and Growth. They took a picture of me shocking hands with the head counselor. I remember thinking how strange it was. At checkout, they slid my watch and Eleanor's bracelet back across the desk. The metal cold. Familiar, mine again. When I got home, my mom said, "You finally look composed," like I'd been polished. My dad nodded once and went back to his email. Julian smiled and said, "See, it wasn't that bad." I just said, "Yeah," and went upstairs. The house looked exactly the same. Spotless, staged, unreal. I didn't tell them about the storm or the kid I helped or the notebook. They wouldn't have cared. They just saw a calmer version of me and assumed the system worked. Let them think that. Looking back now, I can see what New Hampshire really taught me. It wasn't about leadership or teamwork. It was about silence. Not the kind that means surrender, but the kind that means patience. The kind that gives you time to figure out who you are when everyone else is trying to decide for you. They thought the camp fixed me. It didn't. It just taught me how to keep quiet long enough to plan my escape. I was 20 when I landed in Geneva with one suitcase, a partial scholarship, and a quiet promise I'd never ask my parents for help again. The air felt clean, sharp, and expensive. Everything worked here. Theatrums, the clocks, even the people seemed organized. It was the first place I'd ever been where no one knew or cared about the Whitmore name. The finance program at the university was tough, full of people who lived and breathed numbers. The scholarship covered tuition. But after the first semester, my parents sent an email saying they were reassessing support for personal accountability. Translation, I was on my own, so I worked. Mornings at a cafe near the lake, afternoons in class, nights studying until I couldn't see straight. The smell of burnt espresso clung to everything I owned. When rent got tight, I spent a week sleeping behind a shelf of old economics journals at the library. That's where I met Noah. He was a Canadian who had the same exhausted look I did, except he made it seem intentional. He could do complex math in his head while joking about hockey. Laura came later, an Irish economics student, precise and serious, the type who color-coded everything. We ended up in a group project together and didn't stop working together after that. We weren't instant best friends. It was gradual. Late nights in the cafe after closing, splitting sandwiches, arguing over market behavior. They didn't ask about my family, and I didn't offer anything. It felt good to be just a guy trying to survive a finance degree, not the Whitmore kid. For the first time in my life, I belonged somewhere without having to earn it. Money was always tight. I learned where to buy day-old bread, which bus lines were free if you walked fast, and how to stretch one pack of coffee for a week. I kept Eleanor's old sketchbook with me, not for drawing, just notes. Things like, don't lose tracker, this is supposed to be hard. Little reminders to keep moving. Then came the project theft. My roommate, a trust fund guy with a closet full of watches, stole me financial model for another course, and slapped his name on it. When I found out, I didn't yell. I gathered my drafts, the timestamps, the lab history, and sent a calm email to the department head. No accusations, just proof. Their view meeting was short. He tried to talk his way out of it. Didn't work. They failed him and cleared me. No drama. When I told Noah and Laura later, Noah said, "That's the cleanest revenge I've ever seen." Laura handed me a protein bar and said, "Smart move." It was the first time I'd handled betrayal without losing control. Life stayed rough but steady. I started to like the challenge. There was no family name Top Protect or Destroy here, just deadlines and bills. I'd get off the cafe shift at 6 soir, race to class, and study with Noah and Laura till midnight. We laughed about how broke we were and dreamed about starting our own firm one day just to prove we could. Then one spring afternoon, I looked up from the counter at work and saw Aunt Eleanor standing there. She was in town for an art exhibit. Same paint-stained hands, same calm look. We went out for dinner that night. Me, her, Noah, and Laura. She listened more than she talked, but when she did, she asked real questions. She wanted to know what we wanted to build. When the check came, she slid an envelope across the table. "Call it rent from an aunt who hates the cold," she said. I started to protest, but she stopped me. "Not a gift, an investment. Keep your footing." She turned to Noah and said, "You look like you could manage chaos." Then to Laura, "You look like you already do." They both smiled. Rare for Laura. We walked along the Ran afterward. Lights shimmered on the water, and Eleanor said quietly, "Finance and art are the same. Both are about framing reality. Just be honest about the frame you pick." That line stuck with me. She wasn't talking down to me, she was proud. That night, she looked at me like I was worth her time. No one else in my family ever had. Before she left, she gave me a small sketch of use at the cafe. Me mid-sentence, Noah leaning back, counting something, Laura pointing at a notebook. Underneath, she'd written, "Build something worth believing in." I slid it into my bag. When we packed for New York a few weeks later, I handed it to Noah to keep flat with the leases and paperwork. He's had it since. The last year went fast. We took internships, shared a cramped apartment, and lived mostly on instant noodles and stubbornness. On weekends, we'd sit by the lake and plan our imaginary firm. Honest clients, fair terms, no corporate nonsense. When graduation came, it poured rain. Everyone's suits were soaked. The photos looked terrible, and we couldn't stop laughing. After the ceremony, we huddled under a concrete arch, dripping and broke, but weirdly proud. Noah said, "We're doing this, right?" Laura said, "If we do it properly." I said, "Then we start small and make it real." We shook on it. A few weeks later, we packed what little we owned, pulled our savings, and booked one-way tickets to New York. Just the three of us. And a promise to build something from nothing. Geneva had stripped away everything fake. Money, family name, excuses. What was left was real, cold, hard, and exactly what I needed. When we landed in New York, the city felt too big for what we had. We rented a sublet in Midtown that used to be a travel agency. 4 desks, flickering lights, a window that looked onto a brick wall. The radiator hissed non-stop, and the pipes made noises like someone knocking from the inside. It didn't matter. It was ours. We called it New Horizon Partners because we couldn't agree on anything fancier. Laura designed a simple logo in Canva. Noah handled the legal paperwork and taxes. I built a cheap website with stock photos of skylines and smiling people. We didn't have investors or family money, just a small loan Noah got from his uncle, and what was left of my savings from Geneva. The first few months were brutal. We started early, stayed late, and lived on cheap takeout and caffeine. Some nights, the elevator in our building shut down, so we had to climb 6 flights of stairs carrying folders and a printer. Clients didn't take us seriously at first. We were 3 kids running a firm from an office that smelled like burnt wiring. Still, every morning we showed up. Noah was the calm one, good with numbers and even better with people who talk too much. Lara kept us organized and made sure we didn't miss deadlines. I handled the clients, cold calls, and presentations. Most of them said no. A few said maybe. We kept chasing the May. We laughed more than we should have. When the heat broke one week, we worked in coats and gloves. When a ceiling tile fell, Noah taped it back up with duct tape. Lara would roll her eyes but smile when she thought we weren't looking. That office might have been small, but the energy felt bigger than anything I'd known. My parents didn't call once, no messages, no interest. It was like I'd been erased. Then one afternoon, I saw a video on Afinance channel. My mother, Vivian Whitmore, was giving a televised charity speech. She stood at a podium surrounded by cameras, smiling, that perfect social smile. She talked about the importance of family values and responsibility. Then she said, "My brilliant younger son Julian represents all we value in integrity and excellence." She mentioned me once and called me Andrew. The host corrected her gently, and she smiled like she hadn't noticed. A week later, a finance blog ran a recap of the event. Under a photo of Julian shaking hands with donors was another one of me from Geneva pulled from an old press release. The caption read, "The Forgotten Whitmore Heir." I stared at that headline for a long time. Then I closed the page and went back to work. Then one afternoon it happened. Our first real break. A hedge fund manager named Carl Brenner stopped by after Noah met him ATA networking event. Carl was older, blunt, and didn't seem impressed by much. I gave him our pitch straight. No fluff, no fake confidence. Just what we could do, how we do it, and how much it had cost. When I finished, I expected him to walk. Instead, he said, "You talk like someone who's actually done the work." He signed the contract a week later. It wasn't a huge deal, but it gave us credibility. That one client turned into 2, then 4. Soon we had enough to pay rent without worrying. The more we grew, the harder we worked. Days blended together. Morning gym, subway, office, takeout, repeat. We made mistakes, but learned fast. Every time I looked around that small room, seeing Noah on the phone and Lara typing at lightning speed, it felt like the right kind of chaos. Then Julian showed up. I hadn't heard from him in over a year. He mailed first saying he was in New York for meetings and wanted to catch up. He said fine. We met at a cafe near the office. He looked exactly how I remembered. Tailored suit, polished tone, confidence that came from never being questioned. He congratulated me on the firm, but called it a startup project. Then he suggested we merge under the Whitmore name. You'd get access to clients, capital, everything, he said, smiling like he was offering a gift. I said no. He didn't expect that. Why? You'd finally be part of something bigger. I already am, I said. He stared at me for a second, then sighed. You're wasting potential trying to do this on your own. I smiled. That's the point. He paid for his coffee, left, and I haven't seen him since. A few weeks later, some financial blog ran a short piece comparing Whitmore Capital and U.S. The headline read, "Rebel versus Royal. The Whitmore brothers building 2 very different empires." Clients mentioned it. A few investors called just to see what we were about. For the first time, our name didn't need theirs attached to it. I showed the article to Noah and Lara. Noah grinned and said, "So, we're the rebels?" Lara just said, "We'd better live up to it." I saved the article anyway. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. It said I existed outside their shadow. By the time it turned 28, the firm had a small list of steady clients, a new office with working lights, and a view that wasn't just a brick wall. In hindsight, New Horizon proved I could build something real without borrowing power from a name that had never cared about me. That headline, Rebel versus Royal, wasn't wrong. It just didn't tell the full story. I wasn't rebelling anymore. I was finally standing where I wanted to be. E was 29 when I got the call. It was early morning, and I was halfway through Animail when my phone rang. A quiet voice on the other end said, "Mr. Whitmore, I'm sorry to inform you. Your Aunt Eleanor passed away last night." I didn't say anything for a few seconds. The caller kept talking something about arrangements, but I'd already stopped listening. Eleanor was the only person in my family who ever treated me like I mattered. She didn't preach or criticize. She just showed up when noon else did. Losing her felt different, like the last bridge between me and the Whitmore name had burned itself out. The next day, I drove from New York to Providence. The GPS took me down narrow streets lined with old brick buildings until I found her gallery. It was small, wedged between a bakery and an antique shop. The sign just said E. Whitmore Studio. Inside, it smelled like turpentine and coffee. The lights were still on. Half-finished canvases leaned against the walls, and her desk was covered in sketches, receipts, and letters. A neighbor handed me a key and said she kept everything here. Didn't trust storage? I spent hours sorting through her work. She had sketches of cityscapes, portraits, abstract pieces that didn't make sense until you stared long enough. In the back room, I found a sealed wooden box on the floor. On the lid, she'd written in red paint, "Private." It flashed me back to the empty oak box my father gave me at 14 and called Potential. That one was hollow. This one had weight. I sat down and opened it. Inside were old envelopes, notebooks, and a stack of papers labeled Whitmore Holdings, internal correspondence. I flipped through a few and realized what I was looking at. Financial reports, wire transfers, and letters between executives, all pointing to the same thing. Years of money being moved through shell companies that didn't exist. It was corporate fraud, and the signatures on half the documents belonged to my father. I didn't know what to do. I stayed there until the sun went down. The only sound, the hum of the old heater. By the time I left, I'd taken photos of every page. I wasn't planning revenge. I just wanted the truth somewhere that couldn't disappear. Days later, my father called. His voice was steady, practiced. "I'll send a car," he said. "You found something that belongs to the family." I said it was in her gallery. It belonged to her. Hepost. Eleanor was unwell. You know that she misunderstood what she had. She-labeled it private. Maybe that means you weren't supposed to have it. He didn't raise his voice. "Adrian, this isn't a negotiation. Return the materials." I hung up. 3 days after that, a courier brought me a legal notice. My parents were suing me for possession of confidential family property. I laughed when I read it. Not because it was funny, but because it was exactly what I expected. The media picked it up within a week. Estranged Whitmore son accused of withholding private documents. Then another unstable heir threatens family empire. The headlines always used the same words. Unstable, bitter, jealous. It was the same story rewritten from that gala years ago. I didn't even try to defend myself publicly. Noah and Lara stood by me. They told me to fight it, so I did. We hired a small legal team and filed a response. The case dragged on for months. Their lawyers tried everything. Intimidation, technicalities, claims that the documents were forgeries. My father didn't show up to the hearings, but his lawyers did. Carrying themselves like they owned the room. I kept showing up too, calm, quiet, prepared. I wasn't fighting for money. I just wanted the truth out. In one hearing, their lead attorney called me an emotionally unstable young man clinging to a false narrative. I didn't say a word. I just handed over Eleanor's notebook. Her notes, sketches, and receipts from the same years as the documents. They matched line for line. A few weeks later, the judge ruled in my favor. The box and everything inside it were deemed Eleanor's personal property, not corporate records. The ruling was public. The evidence was, too. The next morning's headline read, "Black Sheep Exposes Whitmore Empire." It spread fast. Investors started asking questions. A few smaller news outlets called me a whistleblower. My parents said nothing publicly. They didn't have to. Silence was enough. That night, I sat alone in Eleanor's gallery. The floor creaked with every step. I looked around at her paintings and thought about how she'd probably known this would happen. That one day someone would find the truth and have to decide what to do with it. Julian called. I almost didn't answer. His voice was tight, controlled. "You destroyed us," he said. "No," I said. I stopped pretending. He didn't reply, just hung up. I stayed in that gallery for a while, watching dust float in the yellow light. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel victorious. Just tired. They'd always said I was unstable, angry, out of control. Maybe I'd been once, but not anymore. This wasn't revenge. It was air after years of suffocation. Looking back now, you realize it didn't feel like winning, just breathing for the first time. I was 32 when my father decided to turn business into war. It started with a headline, "Whitmore Capital Announces Expansion into Private Wealth." The photo showed him shaking hands with new investors, smiling like it was a charity event. I knew what it really was, a move designed to bury me. At first I ignored it. We had our own clients, our own rhythm. New Horizon Partners had grown into something solid. 20 employees, a clean track record, and a steady reputation for handling high-rise risk markets the right way. Then slowly things started to shift. Rumors began circulating. Whispers that we'd mishandled trades, that our compliance team was cutting corners. A few clients pulled out. Then the call came. The SEC was opening an investigation into New Horizon. The words hit like a punch, but I didn't flinch. I'd seen this move before. It had my father's fingerprints all over it. The quiet manipulation, the calculated leaks, the setup designed to make me fold. I called an emergency meeting. Noah sat across the table, jaw tight, scrolling through reports. Lara was on speaker from London, calm but furious. "They're trying to bleed us through process," she said. "Then we give them nothing to bleed," I told her. Webb brought in outside counsel, redid every compliance report, audited every file, every trade, every client, every account was rechecked. It cost us months of work and sleepless nights. But I refused to let panic make me sloppy. Meanwhile, Whitmore Capital was everywhere. Billboards, magazine spreads, news features about the family's new financial dynasty. They took meetings with our clients, offering lower fees and greater stability. Some switched, most didn't. One afternoon, Noah came into my office holding a printed email chain. "You need to see this." The emails were between a Whitmore Capital lawyer and an anonymous external contact, the same one who'd submitted the SEC tip. The language matched the false claims exactly. It was their setup. We had proof. We couldn't leak it yet. Not without burning the case, but we kept it ready quietly. Through it all, I stayed calm. Maybe too calm. Reporters called me unflappable once. The truth was simpler. I just stopped caring what my parents thought. During those months, I worked differently. Instead of fighting to prove innocence, I focused on rebuilding the firm. I told the team we were done chasing old money. We pivot, I said. We focus on sustainable tech, renewable energy, clean manufacturing, future markets. It wasn't just a strategy, it was distance. My father's world ran on image and control. Ours would run on actual work. It took time, but investors started noticing. The same week, the SEC froze part of our accounts for review. We landed 2 major clients from a climate innovation fund. They said they liked how we handled pressure. That contract kept the lights on. Then one night around midnight, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. It was Julian. His voice was thin, tired. "I can't stop this," he said. "He won't listen to me. He wants you gone." For a second, I thought he was drunk, but he wasn't. He sounded scared. "Then stop helping him," I said. Silence. Then Thaline went dead. A month later, the SEC closed the investigation. Official statement. No evidence of wrongdoing found. The news broke the same morning. Another headline hit. Whitmore Capital under internal audit after whistleblower allegations. Their firm was being investigated for falsified returns and hidden offshore accounts. The same behavior they'd accused us of. I never asked, but I'd bet Julian pulled that ripcord. It unraveled fast. Employees left. Investors pulled out. Within 6 months, Whitmore Capital collapsed. My father vanished from the press, and my mother deleted her social profiles like none of it had ever happened. Julian sent me a text one night. It just said, "I'm sorry. I should have said something earlier." I stared at it for a while, then typed back. "Learn how to stand up to him." He never replied. Noah printed the SEC clearance letter and framed it above the office coffee machine. "Proof we're officially boring again," he said. Lara laughed for the first time in months. Business slowly came back, clients returned, new ones joined. Our firm didn't explode into fame or fortune. It just steadied itself, stronger than before. Some nights I'd stay late, looking out the window over the city. The same skyline my parents used to brag about now just looked like lights. People working, surviving, moving on. When the press tried to interview me about the Whites, I said, "Nothing. Let them chase ghosts." Only later did I realize something had finally broken free inside me. 4 years, I'd been fighting to prove them wrong, to win, to outlast, to show I wasn't a mistake. But standing there, watching Whitmore Capital eat itself alive, I realized I didn't need to win against them. I just needed to stop playing their game. By then, I already had. I'm 35 now, and somehow I'm standing in a ballroom again, just like I did 20 years ago. Except this time, I'm not the kid sitting in the back waiting for it to end. The chandeliers, the fake smiles, the careful applause, it's all the same. Only difference is this time I'm the one they're clapping for. The Global Ethics and Finance Awards, still a ridiculous name to me, had decided that what we built at New Horizon Partners was worth celebrating. The host says my name, and for a second, I think I misheard him. Then people start applauding. I walk up, shake hands, accept the glass trophy, and then I see them, my parents. Front row, perfectly lit by the stage lights. My mother, Vivian, smiling. That controlled smile she's worn her whole life. My father, Charles, expression blank but sharp, like he's judging the furniture. They're being honored tonight, too, for philanthropic excellence. The irony doesn't escape me. In the 2 years after the collapse, they ran the full rehab playbook. Crisis PR, a rebranded family foundation, and 7-figure checks to hospitals and museums until the circuit decided they were respectable again. When the applause dies down, the moderator asks the question everyone was waiting for. "Adrian, how has your family shaped your values in business?" I glance toward the front row. My mother's smile stiffens. My father folds his hands. I say, "My parents taught me how silence can hurt. My aunt taught me how to make it mean something." The room freezes for a moment. No one moves. Then someone claps, slow, hesitant, and the rest follow. It's polite applause, then real. Cameras flash. I nod once and step down before they can ask anything else. I skip the press line, head straight for the exit. The last thing I want is tossing around pretending to be civil. But as I reach the hallway, I hear her voice. Adrian. I stop. Vivian is standing there with my father just behind her. She's older now, but still perfectly put together. The kind of person who never lets time touch her. Charles is quiet, watching, waiting for me to make the first move. That speech, she says, smiling thinly. You didn't need to embarrass us in public. I didn't, I say. You did that yourselves. Her eyes narrow. You've always had a talent for twisting things. You think integrity means humiliating your family? Charles finally speaks. His voice is low, deliberate. We gave you everything: education, access, opportunity. You repay that by dragging our name through the mud. I almost laugh. You didn't give me anything. Eleanor did. You gave medicines and lawyers. He steps closer. You could have been part of this family's future. Instead, you've made yourself a problem we have to live with. I meet his eyes, then live with it. He exhales. The kind of sound that means the conversation's over in his mind. My mother's expression softens just a little, but not enough to matter. You've always mistaken defiance for strength, she says quietly. Someday you'll realize the cost of burning bridges. I already paid it, I tell her. Turns out it was worth it. Neither of them replies. They just stand there. The two people who spent half their lives pretending I didn't exist. Looking at me like I've finally become something they can't buy or control. Then I turn and walk away. Some minutes later, I'm at a rooftop bar overlooking the East River. It's not fancy, but it's ours. Same spot we've met at for years. Noah's leaning back in his chair, drink in hand. Laura's typing something on her laptop, half listening, half working. When they see me, Noah grins. Look who's famous. Hardly, I say, dropping the award onto the table with a dull thud. Laura smirks. Heavy? Mostly symbolic, I say. The waitress brings tacos and fries from the stand downstairs. We eat, talk business, argue about clients, make fun of each other's old clothes. It feels good. Simple. Then Noah reaches into the flat folder he's kept since we moved and pulls out Eleanor's sketch, the one from Geneva. He sets it on the table. The paper's a little worn at the edges, but the lines are still clear. It's still us. She'd get a kick out of tonight, Noah says. Yeah, I say quietly. She would. For a while, none of us talks. The city hums below. Laura finally closes her laptop and says, We made it through all of it. Feels strange, doesn't it? It does, I say. They leave around midnight. Iste staring at the skyline. From up here the city looks peaceful, just lights and air. For years I thought I had to win to outgrow them to prove something. But standing there, I realize I don't need to win anymore. I already have what they'll never understand. Peace. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube, this video deserves to blow up.